Matt and John from American Pulps, welcome to Suit Up the Podcast. And once again, looking dapper as anything.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having us again.
Yes,
It's
thank
always
you.
a pleasure.
Yeah, we had such a great time last time. I wanted to come right back.
Hey, you guys are always welcome. The door is always open. Today, we are talking about Secret of the Incas, which I'm excited for because we've got Indiana Jones 5 coming out. So first and foremost, how do we feel about Indiana Jones 5? We've got, as of recording, 5 months, because I think it's a July release.
I believe so. Yeah, I just saw an interview with Harrison Ford about his other show, the Paramount one.
Yeah.
Which I haven't seen, to be honest. But yeah, I like what he was saying in the interview is it's the last one for him because he's getting up there. So
he's in his 70s, isn't he?
Yeah. I feel like they're gonna.
He's got to be well into his 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they'll wrap up Indy and then they'll have I think they have prequels planned and stuff like that. So I don't think you could go any lower than the Crystal Skull. So I'm excited for them topping that at least. Oh, and
I didn't see Crystal Skull.
Thank you. Yes. I've got my American Pulps mug for those of you that are on audio. Also, for those of you on audio, both of these gentlemen are wearing suits. So again, big pluses in their favor.
Well, it's our weekend suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like you gotta have your weekend suit.
Coat. You know, I'm gonna hit the club later, the yacht club. So
I don't know if you guys see It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but one of my favorite moments is when they buy a houseboat and one of the characters, Dennis, his first reaction is, I need to have the right yachting attire.
Is that the one with Rumham?
No, that's a different episode.
Okay.
No, the episode with the boat is The Implication.
Yes, The Implication. Yes, I know that one. Yes. Yeah, The Implication, because you're out at sea. But yeah, Rumham is one of my favorites. Did you see that one, John?
No. I've seen where they fixed the gas crisis, and I've seen one that had to do with Hulk Hogan.
You're from Florida.
That's it. It's a glaring hole in my knowledge of pop culture. I'm not
but being from Florida, if it's anything Hulk Hogan, you have to like that.
Yeah, it was issued to me along with you know what I mean, along with the numerous charities.
It's a
like,
part of.
And by the way, Hulk Hogan. Yeah, I mean
the welcome packet when you arrive.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up in like Wrestler Town. So like all of the wrestlers lived where I'm from. So like you just be like
that's the town in
around.
Young Rock, isn't it?
Excuse me?
In Young Rock, they have like an episode where it's all of the wrestlers together when he's younger.
It might be. I mean, you know, because I mean, you'd go to like get like a burger and there'd be Macho Man Randy Savage.
I was just gonna say it'd be crazy seeing Macho Man in the wild.
Dude, he looks exactly the same. I've seen him a million times. He looks at you're like, that's obviously Macho Man Randy Savage. Same glasses, bandana, the whole everything, dude. Like
permanently
he'd be
character.
Eating sushi. Like he'd be sitting there, you know, at like a sushi place, like eating sushi, and I saw him at Kinko's one time making copies. And first of all, I was like, Macho Man makes his own copies, but like, but he was like, dude, I'm gonna make the copies. I mean, it was the same. He looked just like he was Macho Man. There was no off time for Macho Man. Like he was Macho.
He was devoted to the character. Also a great
Undertaker. I'd see Undertaker at like a go-kart track with his kids, and it was obviously Undertaker.
Speaking of commitment to the role, Indiana Jones. John, how do you feel about Indiana Jones 5?
I didn't see Crystal Skull.
Good for you.
So, you know, I mean, look, I think I'm a big Harrison Ford fan. You know, I think he's one of the great movie stars. And I mean, I think Raiders is still can't mess with it. I mean, you know, in terms of just a cinematic achievement, I mean, it's just incredible. 1 and 3 are the ones that I rewatch. But 1 I think is like the high water mark.
We talk about Indy a lot when we're talking about our stories, because we have the Indiana Jones or the James Bond open that we try to add to our stories.
The
cold open. I love the Indiana Jones cold open where he usually fails. Like it's like he's getting punched in the mouth in the cold open. So it's like, you're seeing him and he's doing this cool indie stuff, and then he fails, and you're like, and as a viewer, you can kind of put yourself into his perspective. It's not like he's Superman.
Yeah,
he has his faults. It's like Die Hard, and the open is, he's afraid of heights, he's afraid of flying, and it's okay, he's vulnerable, he's not like this.
It's actually one of the complaints I heard about Crystal Skull, like in a like textual analysis, is that he's too invulnerable throughout the movie.
I mean, he gets nuked.
Yeah.
And lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that's like kind of an issue for me anytime you have these beloved heroes that, like, I mean, what Raiders was what, like 83 or something like that, or like early 80s probably, right?
Yeah, I want to say,
and like
yeah,
and so it's like when Indiana Jones was sort of like solidified as a character, it was
82.
82. Okay, yeah. So like when he was solidified as a character, it was before we had sort of taken these characters and fetishized them as like sort of like, well, kind of like that thing that he takes from the Jovitos, you know what I mean? Where it's like we have like these characters
an idol,
that turn into these sort of like spiritual icons, versus like Indiana Jones never was that. And so it's like when you start rebooting franchises, people get so bogged down in fan service that, like, and I
Star Wars
very expensive to me. Yeah, it's very expensive to make movies, and people don't watch them as often now, so that, like, I get it. But like it's like in the Game of Thrones, like once Game of Thrones surpassed the, like, once they moved past, they didn't have books to base stuff on anymore. It's like, well, they're not going to kill Jon Snow. You know what I mean? And then they did, and I was like, oh, cool, great. Like, okay, we're back on track with like what I expect from the show. And then they brought him back. God, but I think the problem is once these characters become owned by everybody, people are too afraid to like give them the kinds of flaws that we like them.
Yes, they become too precious with the characters.
Place, you know what I mean? So it's like Raiders is like a pretty ballsy movie, you know what I mean? And
it was very ballsy for Spielberg to direct it at the time too, because he was like kind of on the outs with the studios, and they didn't want to go over. Like George Lucas like kind of resurrected Spielberg's career with that one. But yeah, sorry.
What an era.
Oh yeah. Well, and didn't Spielberg, he wanted to make a Bond movie.
Yes.
Right? That was the thing. He was like, and then George
Lucas was like, I got something better than Bond.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
so I've heard this way, he's the American James Bond.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something fair to that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. He's fighting Nazis, and I think James Bond kind of came from Ian Fleming's work in World War II. So you have that. It's around the same time, really. I could definitely see him as the American. He's got the cowboy hat and
well, yeah, and I think like it's one interesting thing actually about Secret of the Incas, like how much.
Had either of you seen Secret of the Incas before?
Not before this. I never saw it. Yeah. Did you?
I had seen it once before because I had found it like on the list. Raiders.net, I think is what's called. The Raider.net, wonderful website. They made a list of all of the movies that are like influences of Indiana Jones. At some point I was like, oh, I'm going to watch them all. I've watched 3 of them so far.
Okay.
And this is one of them. And you can definitely see the obvious influences. But sorry, John, what were you saying?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I just thought it was very interesting, like, and maybe it didn't register this same way at the time, but like I thought it was very interesting how unlikable they were willing to make Harry Steele, which great 80s porn name.
Amazing name.
Amazing name.
I mean
amazing.
That's like, that's Max
Harry
Thunder.
Steele is fantastic. Yeah. But like how does anybody meet a guy named Harry Steele and not immediately start laughing? But yeah, I mean, I thought it was very interesting, like how misanthropic they were willing to make this dude. You know, and maybe at the time it didn't read that same way because
Mhm.
well the writers um you know what, I wrote it down actually so I didn't get it wrong.
But yeah.
Well, and I don't know, I may be pronouncing it wrong, but Sydney, it's either Sidney Boehm or Sidney Bain, and I don't remember it, but he wrote The Big Heat, and then Randall McDougall wrote The Naked Jungle, of course, but he also
Mhm.
wrote Mildred Pierce. So
Oh.
like, so yeah. So like,
Mhm.
but then like particularly with and the director Jerry Hopper, he directed The Naked Alibi. So you have like this really cool sort of undercurrent of like hard boiled
Mhm.
dialogue
Yep.
throughout the movie, and it's
Oh
like
yeah.
it was pretty cool that like you had like a Charlton Heston character really being willing, like right out the gate, to be such a misanthropic dickhead.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's very
So
funny.
we might have to do a part 2 where, because I made the list of films, Naked Jungle is on there, and I assure people listening it's not a porno, despite having that kind of name. It's a very interesting double feature with this movie because as bad as not Harrison Ford, as Charlton Heston is in this film in terms of just being willing to be a real creep. Oh, Naked Jungle, I watched it and I was like, my goodness, like I forgot how back then you could just be so incredibly sexist and
Oh
misogynistic. And then you
yeah.
realize, oh no, they actually were doing that intentionally as you have the drama unfold.
Yes, yeah.
So we'd have to make that the double
They're
feature
also
at some
very
point.
sexist back then. But
They
yeah,
were, but yes, that was the point for that film, for
yeah.
whatever reason, for the plot. So, Secret of the Incas, what were you guys' big takeaways right from the start?
I was kind of blown away just because it's Machu Picchu.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to John after I watched it. It was like I was shocked at how much they shot on
Oh
location
yeah,
because just like from a film perspective, that's back then the equipment was not light, and you have to hike a long way to get there. And also it's like it's a national it's a international heritage site now.
yeah.
So like some of the stuff that they were doing there, you can't be
Mm-hmm.
doing.
I think that this is the film, according to the stuff I read, apparently the Peruvian tourism like went through the roof after this
Yes.
movie. Because this was a successful movie at its time, that like pre-blockbuster type thing where people were going to see it and then went, oh, I have to see this place.
Yeah, I mean it's visually like it's stunning, and it's obvious that they shot it on location. You can't paint that. You can't get that
No.
in a backlot. Is very interesting to see that with Charlton.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like I I voted, you know, between Matt and I, you know, I voted for this movie because it had Ima Sumak in it. And
Yeah,
like I've been like my aunt when I was a kid, she put me on to Ima Sumak, and I was like, and I believed all the mythology that she was like descended from the last Inca emperor and all that stuff, like which I think was probably ultimately a little bit of showbiz trickery.
yeah,
But
In the
it didn't
best
matter
way.
because I mean she's like, and it's like so I had like these two weird takeaways from the movie where I saw it kind of late at night. So, but like was the first is like, you know, Ima Sumak is doing her like insane five vocal range, you know,
Yes.
like 5 octave vocal range thing, and just blowing the roof off the place. And like anytime they cut to like the like, for lack of a more genteel term, the white people, they're always like kind of smiling, kind of half patronizing, like, oh, isn't it lovely? It's like, dude, like nobody's sitting there going, what in the hell am I witnessing? Like, there's no way that in real life you'd watch somebody do something like that and not go, I've just been clued into a whole other realm of being, man. Like this is, you know, I thought that was so funny. Like they just like kind of
Yeah,
smiled
they're
as
just
if they were like watching them like weave baskets or something. You
yeah.
know what I
Or
mean? Like
watching
it's
little
so
kids do like sing a song, like
yeah,
it's
yeah. Like isn't
you
that
know,
sweet? Like
it
oh,
like
it's
is
a
what?
Christmas Carol.
such a
Like,
colonialism.
yeah,
The end of the
Yeah.
movie, we'll get to there when we get there, but it has a moment like that too.
Oh,
yes,
you know what? I think yes. And then the other thing I found very interesting about Charlton Heston as a performer is like, this is gonna sound weird, but like he has this way of going onto a set and like it suddenly looks like a set. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like he looks like he's gonna break everything or something. Like you know, the way he kind of moves around, like
Yeah.
it's like kind of
He
John
is-
Wayne-ish in the sense, but
Yes.
it's like whenever he's inside, you're like, this guy's gonna break everything in here. Like it's like it's hard to explain, but he's like he's got this real, and I know he was a big dude. He was like 6'3" or something like that, but like he just has this sort of like this crazy like presence about him. I'm not even saying that's a good thing. Like he just like I can see it's like when you watch the old Charlton Heston movies, not the ones that are like really iconic, like
Yeah,
like
Ten Commandments,
Ben
yeah.
Hur or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, but like you know, it's interesting to see sort of in the context of this B movie, where I mean, for like whatever, like that. I don't mean that pejoratively. It's like this kind of smaller movie.
Yeah.
Like he's like too much for this movie to contain. It's like too
He is
big
epic.
of a personality.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
It's very interesting when you see somebody that's like too big for a movie. Like it's very like not even physically, just like you know.
Yeah. And I liked seeing Uncle Billy from It's a Wonderful Life as the bad guy.
Oh, he plays Ed Morgan.
I thought that was I mean, and he didn't strike me. I thought that was an interesting casting choice because he didn't strike me as a very, you know, going
Menacing.
up against. Yeah, and he's
okay. I wrote down most unrealistic thing in this entire movie is Ed Morgan knocking out Charlton Heston with a judo chop.
Yeah, that's I mean, just like height wise, that's like impossible.
Yes.
Like why are you hitting my shoulder blade? You know, like
it's a pressure point, man. You know,
taught by the ancient mystics. So
yeah, exactly.
Starting off in this movie, it opens with him chasing goats, which I think might be the weirdest version of telling you that he's competent and knows the area than anything else.
That is a strange way to start. Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta chase a goat. You know?
Yeah, it's instead of save the cat, you know, he's chasing.
I asked myself that. I'm like, is this that version of Save the Cat is chasing goats off a track so that the bus can keep going?
He was like the original Chuck Norris. It's like heroes save the cat, Chuck Heston chases the goat, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So Charlton Heston is, for people that haven't seen this movie, which I'm guessing is most people, the basic premise is from the start, Charlton Heston is a tour guide, which, again, one of those things where it's like, I rewatched Air Force One recently, and they have that wonderful hero qualifier moment where it's like, we have to explain why he can face the bad guys. And you have like the general going, he ran the most helicopter missions in Nam or something along those lines.
Yeah.
There is nothing in this movie that ever actually explicitly states Charlton Heston is a badass.
Yeah.
No,
Other than
he shows people
he
around,
just shows
hey,
up.
Yeah, and he basically picks the Rube's pockets when he does it, which I love. He's like a tour guide who's just pick. He's like when you land at like you go to New Orleans, for instance, and you land at the airport and you get a taxi and they ask you, "Have you ever been here?" And you say yes because you know, no, I haven't been here. They're just going to take you all over the place. And you know your fare is going to be ridiculous, and that's Charlton Heston in this movie for all these poor people.
He said, I wrote down this line because it was so good when he drops the people back off at the airport, and this is like that moment where you realize, oh no, he's a womanizer. And this girl that like was batting her eyes at him, he's like, if you're wondering how you're going to pay me without hurting my feelings, Miss Morris, forget it. Just take out your roll and start counting.
It's great.
I
the
love
dialogue.
Oh, it was great. And also Miss Morris, like totally down DTF, you know, with her husband right there was.
Yes. He literally picks them up at the airport, and the woman's instantly like, well, aren't you a tall drink of water? And her husband's like, I think I should take a nap. And she's like, yes,
a long
nap. A long nap.
Yeah. Little advice for husbands out there. Don't immediately get to town with the handsome movie star stranger and be like, I'm gonna take a nap, you know.
Yeah. After he just took your whole roll of money, going from the airport to the hotel.
So this film feels like it has three stories that don't really mesh together, that are sequential, because it starts off with him as the tour guide, And then he meets up with his buddy Ed Morgan, who's Uncle Billy from It's a Wonderful Life. And the guy's like, they found this treasure map, but it's missing a piece. Gee, I wonder who has that piece. Charlton Heston, who has that piece, is like, gee, I wonder who. And then Ed Morgan sends someone to shoot at Charlton Heston. And Charlton Heston sees him, runs over two buildings away to hit the guy, break his gun, and rob him. The shooter stayed in the same building, did not move.
Well, not only that, so he was a sniper who missed. So like, here's another thing where I was like, okay, Uncle Billy or whatever, not a great bad guy. He has one henchman who has a sniper rifle, and he's like directly across the street, and misses. It's like, it's not a hard shot. And then Charlton Heston, he runs across, and then he easily breaks the rifle, which was strange to me because Charlton Heston, big gun guy.
Good point.
Right, good point. Yeah.
like from his cold dead hands, like he just broke a rifle.
Like Superman, just bent.
Yes, yeah. But very incompetent bad guys. And Charlton Heston just like, well, you like,
and robs him then too. He's like, how much did he pay you? And he's like, oh, he paid me this. And he just is like, forks it over.
Robs him. That was the best, when he just robbed the guy.
Great.
And then from there, he confronts Ed Morgan, who says, I meant for him to miss.
Yeah.
You're like, but why? It's never like explained.
Right. That is
what the plan is.
Yeah, I took it as he missed. Like it wasn't meant for that. But I mean, I guess I guess you take it. Yeah.
And then he's instantly like, there's a woman that needs help, and I think that you should help her, after literally having just tried to have him shot.
Sold. Yeah.
And Harry Steele's like, tell me about her. Doesn't even question it. He's just like, let's go. Sure. Tell me who the broad is.
Yeah. It felt like they crammed. I mean, if it was a movie today, it probably would be like 3 hours. Mm-hmm. It's a short movie. I feel
so the film's 2 hours long, but there's not a lot that happens.
Yeah. Was it 2 hours? Wow.
It was 2 hours. 2 hours and 9 minutes. And there are these scenes of like them just walking.
Yeah. Different audiences back then.
Yeah.
You have to now you have to have like stuff moving at all times, because you're competing with, people have cell phones in their pockets while they're even at the movie theater. Back then it was this captivated audience. Sorry, John.
Well, no, yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, absolutely. Well, I think too, like scenery was a much bigger deal. Like I was reading something recently about how like books that were written decades ago are more descriptive, in their language, because it's like now if you're describing a room for whatever, it's like, yeah, dude, I see 20,000 pictures a day of stuff. I know what it looks like. And so I think, when you have like a captive movie theater audience looking at like Peru or looking at it's like that's as much of a character as anything else. So
that's very true.
It's like those old Bond films.
So.
Yeah.
The ones with Roger Moore, they became travel log elements where, okay, if you're in this location, you're going to take advantage of having the sets and parts of the location to feature, because people wouldn't have seen that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There'd be no, I mean, and particularly something as exotic as Peru or whatever, like people, I mean, because that would have been around the time that like exotica music and all, well, he was in it too, like where like you had sort of like this, people had come back from World War II, and they had seen like the Pacific, what I mean, and they had seen like islands and shit, and like and really like up until that point, I don't know how much of that was really in the collective consciousness in America. So
other than like National
Geographic, linger on a shot of Charlton Heston walking through jungle and be like, whoa, look at that jungle.
Yeah.
And
Well,
to be fair,
usually-
they actually did have a real jungle, which is what makes it cooler
Yes.
than, because
Totally.
most of the movies of that era, they're using backdrops and sets.
Well, yeah, they're in Balboa or Tarzana or somewhere. It's they're where's that place in Pasadena? The Arboretum or whatever. They filmed a bunch of Tarzans there. And yeah, it's also, it's like, I think that's another reason why I like the old film noir movies, because they didn't have those sets, so they had to rely on really tight story. They would, and that's why those film noirs are known for they paint the background with light, because there's nothing going on in the background. It was just like paint, and it was more story driven. Where these adventure ones filmed on location, they're it's a travel log in a way.
One of my thoughts watching this movie is I think I would have enjoyed it more as a book, just because I think that it has a lot of really good dialogue.
Great dialogue. Yeah.
But it feels like the story is just looser in a way that in a book you can tighten it up easier and make it just roll better, in my mind. Whether or not that's accurate, is for anyone to say.
In a book, you can kind of get in the character's head. You can give their motives a little more of a story, instead of like just showing it on screen. I think it would be a better book.
So I think the character of Harry Steele would be much more empathetic in a book, because you could get a much better idea of like sort of, first of all, how he ended up in this situation.
Yes,
that could be interesting.
It doesn't say anything other than we find out through dialogue that like he's waiting for an airplane to steal, for unexplained reasons.
Yeah. And he can afford, like, he's stealing all these Rube's money. He can afford a flight out of Peru.
Yeah.
How much could it possibly cost? Or like go get a boat.
Like, yes, okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
so here's the other thing. Like, we'll get there, but Ed Morgan, when he steals the plane, he gets there to Machu Picchu. Yeah. Ed Morgan follows him. How did Ed get there?
Well, yeah.
Right.
He just springs up like a sprite.
Yeah, it is the same day. Like he beat him to it. Like
Well, it was like in Cape Fear, when he ties himself to the bottom of the car and follows the family. He's under the family car. The whole time Ed Morgan he had tied himself to the undercarriage of the plane.
Yeah. That's he's
hanging on like a gremlin.
Yeah.
So we get the femme fatale who walks in, who honestly, did any of you catch her name? Because I want to say the character's name.
I did not.
Elena. So
I looked up the actress, but
she was fun, but there's this great shot that I noted it because it looks so good. So she arrives at the hotel. She's going to meet Harry in the bar. And when she walks into the bar, the camera is on the mirror. And it uses that shot of her walking in with reflection to then from the mirror, then pan over to her and Harry talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a legitimately good shot in this movie.
Yeah. That was, I think the cinematography was pretty solid throughout. Some of those in the temple scenes are pretty good. They did a good job showing like spatially where all the characters were. But and she goes up to the wrong guy.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
What's Heston's line is something like,
he's like, I'm Harry Steele, and he's like, no, you're not. And he goes, does it matter? He goes, yeah, because I am, and I'm bigger than
I'm bigger than you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love the line when he's like, she says she got picked up by the cops for no visible means of support, and he looks at her and goes, well, they need glasses. Which is just a great, like, hard-boiled line.
Yes.
He has there. I wrote down two other lines that I absolutely love from that exchange. So she tries to hire him to help her get to America. And he's like, lady, I'm waiting for a plane myself. And he's like, well, how much did you have for this? And she goes, $50. And he says, I'm sorry, but the wheels just don't turn for $50.
Yeah.
Right.
Then she starts crying and he says, I've seen so many women cry. It just really doesn't impress me anymore.
Great line.
Yeah,
Great
no,
line.
he's an interesting character. Like you said, John, a very hard boiled type of guy. And that's just I feel like you don't see as many of those types of characters in today's films, really. I mean, like that are just like the heroes, just so unlike.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting too because it's, and I don't know enough about mid-century adventure films to make any kind of like real judgment in this, but it's like it's interesting how you have this sort of like hard-boiledy kind of guy in this genre, like I mean
Yeah.
it's like we've sort of grown used to it because like Indiana Jones to a certain degree is that, I mean, he's more cuddly than Charlton Heston was, and then Michael Douglas's character
Romancing
in
the Stone.
Romancing the Stone, you know what I mean? Like, I mean that in itself has become a trope, but I wonder how much of a departure it was then, like
like King
and
Kong
I don't know,
didn't
like
have that.
Yeah.
what's
So
that?
King Kong didn't have anybody like that. I mean, they had the actor who was kind of like that character, but he ended up being like a pansy. I don't like you. I don't know enough about the those adventure films back then to discuss.
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, obviously the rugged individualist, like no time for your bullshit, like kind of guy. Like that's obviously a big part of
but
it.
this guy
like
feels like
who's
he'd be
just
from a noir novel.
Yeah.
Really, he does feel like a
yeah.
pulp, hard-boiled detective. Even down to like, this is the dame walks in with a good set of legs.
Yeah.
Totally.
Hey, how can I hire you? It literally has that.
Well, and
beat.
that's, like John listed off all the other all the people who were a part of this film. They're all film noir guys.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hard-boiled writers. So it's just like, that's their wheelhouse. That's what they just went back to that, really.
Yeah, I think The Big Heat would have been written maybe a couple of years. I don't know when it was written, but like, but, I mean, as a movie, but like it would have come out maybe a couple
around the
years
same time.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's probably also just just a matter of mechanics. Like you get into a groove of a certain kind of writing, and then you sort of, I don't know. It's just interesting. Like I wonder. I'd be interested to know how much of a conscious decision it was to make this character this kind of character.
Yeah.
And Charlton Heston, I would be interested to know too at the time, like, because any movie that you put out you're very much, particularly with that kind of movie star, you're very much associated with the characters that you play. So I'd be interested to know how much thought went into making this character like this, because it would have been very easy to make this dude virtuous and whatever. Like,
it almost felt like, it was Sterling Hayden was what they were thinking of for that role, and then he turned it down for whatever reason. They're like, I guess because it's more of a Sterling Hayden or Big Heat. I forget
not John Garfield.
Dirty Dozen.
Lee Marvin.
Lee Marvin. Yeah.
Lee Marvin.
You're right. This seems more of a Lee Marvin.
Marvin would have been great in this.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
But it's interesting though, the sort of the Indiana Jones parallel, because like, the thing I found really interesting about, particularly in Raiders, was like he was so focused on the physical, tangible elements of it.
Yep.
And like, I mean, this is obvious. Like his whole journey as a character, it's like, what does he want? What does he need? That kind of thing. But like, what does he need? Obviously, he needs to accept that these things have a spirit, have a life that's more important than it belongs in a museum or whatever. And like, and so Charlton Heston's character, it's a little muddy because it's the movie kind of goes a bunch of different places, but he very much
it's the same
journey. Yeah, he doesn't believe in anything but what he can sell.
It's gold. He can sell it. He can make money.
Believes in gold. Yeah.
And I think that was my issue with the second Indiana Jones film, because he learns all these things in the first one. The second one,
it's a prequel.
Yes, he already so he's like, I don't believe in this, religious mumbo jumbo. but
He
when the
already
second
experienced it.
comes out, he's already experienced a whole lot. He experienced a guy ripping a heart out of another man's chest, and it was still beating, and that man was alive, and all the other religious mumbo jumbo.
Yeah.
That's my issue with Temple of Doom. And now I'm off my soapbox. I just had to get that.
I hadn't even really thought
That's
about
a
it.
good
There's so
point.
many reasons to dislike Temple of Doom, in my opinion.
But
that,
hey, as a Temple of Doom apologist, it's not my favorite, but I would argue if it was a solo movie and you didn't have the other two associated,
Yes.
it would be an amazing movie. It's still that scene at the beginning
fantastic.
is
it's the best.
fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
I think the thing that surprised me in watching Secret of the Incas is how many moments are similar to actually things that they used in Temple of Doom.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a scene coming up. So just to get a little bit farther through the plot here.
You're doing a great job. I keep taking you off.
Hey, no worries. That's the fun of us doing this as a conversation. The other amazing thing is that Harry's talking to Elena, and Elena's like, I'm trying to escape because I want to get to America, to New York. And he says, okay, great, but I can't help you. You don't have enough money. She's like, this other guy is like after me and he's got his own plane. So he's going to come for me if he finds me. And he goes, he has a private plane, do you say? And his literal reaction when she says, no one can tell him I'm here, is to go call the guy and say she's here so he can steal the guy's plane.
Classic Harry Steele.
And then he walks upstairs. Also, I have to bank on this because this has got to be one of my favorite tropes. Girl in a nightgown slip for really no reason at all. Standing there in the room. And I'm like, thank you, movie. Thank you.
Yeah.
And
they check that off.
Check that off. Thank you for addressing this trope in the adventure genre. And then Harry walks in and he's like, so Macau or whatever his name is coming for you. And she goes, oh no, how did that happen? He's like, some heel must have told him.
That's my favorite like plot moment in the movie is the fact that like he did something so despicable and then you realize, oh no, he's got a plan. Like, he's gonna steal this dude's plane
and his money. He also takes the guy's money.
Yeah. And so it's like the idea that like, because it's so much fun when a hero can come off as like very, very unlikable. There's like Han Solo elements to that, where it's like somebody who seems so
just in it for the money,
right? And like and whatever, like I don't care how pretty you are, like you're just a number to me, that kind of thing. And then you're like, oh, he had a plan, like that was probably my favorite plot moment in the movie was the fact that he turned his sort of like jerk way of being into like a very like slick move,
it was a big gamble, but but he was able to like
pull it off.
The girl. It was like he that guy, and then no one even like afterwards they're like, oh, he didn't even press charge. He doesn't want to press charges. Stole the plane, stole the money, stole the girl, but it's embarrassing. So
this high-ranking official in communist Romania who's not used to getting screwed with in any way, like
exactly.
He's clearly gonna let something like that slide. Like
he's not gonna send Charlton to the gulags at all.
Not at all.
No.
It's
all in good fun.
It's all in good fun. They're in the jungle. They land the plane, and then we get like this wonderful little moment where I think he like asks what kind of shoes she packed. And he's like, I wouldn't wear the heels, which is just, again, a little funny gag. And then we have them like at the campfire, very reminiscent of Indy and Willie and Short Round.
I was going to say, that is very Temple of Doom. Even down,
the raft.
The heels, the raft too. But the heels is very much Romancing the Stone too.
Yes.
But I believe there's a beat about the heels in Temple of Doom. That whole camping scene is very Temple of Doom, minus Data. I call him Data. I call him Data, but that's from the Goonies. I forget what his name is in
Short Round.
Yeah. I find it very funny. It's interesting to watch these movies through a modern lens and like to say like, okay, like how would things be written differently now?
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't mean that, like, if somebody is a sort of like is a misanthropic character, they probably wouldn't act much differently if it was written out. You know what I mean? So it's not a matter of,
Yeah.
like, I don't think characters should behave differently just because we're in a more sensitive time or whatever and all that. But it's like the whole time it's like I was like, oh man, so like this woman literally has no choice like than to do whatever it is that you have in mind. You know what I mean? So it's
The
like when
implication.
he's like
It's back. Yeah, I was just
wooing
gonna say it's back to
her,
Dennis. It's the implication. Yeah.
he's like wooing her by the fire and all that stuff. It's like, dude, this chick has no option. Like, this is like, she might even be into you, bro, but like, you know, but like she like, you know, or she got Stockholm syndrome already or whatever it is. But like, she's like, was Ceausescu in power by that point? Like, I mean, we're talking about like she'd be sent back to like a bad spot.
Yeah.
You
Oh yeah,
know?
big time.
And
Also, like when she did have an option, she like I was like, go to the doctor. Like go to the doctor in
oh, I
Boston.
know this guy
I was like,
seems
what?
fine.
And he's like a good guy. He treats you right. Like
Yeah,
Okay.
I
So
know. That thirsty archaeologist. Holy God.
okay, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So they walk through the jungle to the place that the like little rock thing told him was where the golden the sunburst is
Can I
our
just say
MacGuffin of the film.
that map is not
Oh,
very good. Like
no.
just a couple lines on a rock. No one figured it out after like millennia.
It's
They were missing that one little piece.
how, and they never address how he got the piece. Like it's one of those things that they just are like, he's got the piece. We're not even explaining how Morgan knows he has the piece. It's just, you know, he's got the bit and he's been waiting until that day, apparently, to put the little rock piece there.
I had to rewind the movie several times because I was like, there's no way that how did I miss how he got this? Like, you know?
Yeah. Because like the rock couldn't have told him.
No. So they get there and there's already archaeologists excavating this tomb, looking for a person. They have a whole bunch of indigenous people with them. And it opens on the first of our folk singing interludes. Now, John, you know far more about this than I did. So explain to the audience what is going on. Because me just watching the movie, I'm like, whoa, we take a hard turn here for a movie that has no soundtrack to all of a sudden have very serious music here going on.
This crazy sound. Well, so Ima Sumac was she like they call her kind of like the queen of exotica music. And so like, you know, when in the sort of post World War II era when everybody was, and I think it was like around the time Hawaii became a state in
the 50s,
in 59, right? Yeah. And so there was a period of time where people were really fascinated by this idea of like Polynesian or like South American or like, you know, and so what ended up happening is there was that whole genre of music that was just this weird mishmash of like what we thought other cultures kind of would sound like. It's like, I love it. It's like, it's kind of like the spaghetti Western of music, you know, where it's like, it doesn't have any real, anyway. So Ima Sumac, whose original name was, and I wrote it down because I couldn't remember exactly, was Zoila Augusta Emperatriz Chavari de Castillo. And Ima Sumac means
it's a good stage name. She needed a stage name.
She needed a stage name. It's a great name, but like, you know, and it meant Ima Sumac means how beautiful in Quechua.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, she learned how to sing. She taught herself her own techniques of singing by imitating like birds and like, you know, she had this like crazy, it's like either 4.5 or 5 octave vocal range. She has like the world record for the best vocal range. And she was a big star when Secret of the Incas came out. I would venture a guess that maybe her popularity at the time, she ended up selling like 40 million records. She was a big star.
Yeah, she was big.
Like,
She was kind of top
She was the
billing.
first Latin American to perform at like Carnegie Hall, and like the first
Wow.
Latin. She was the first Latin American to have a star on the Walk of Fame. Like she was like a big deal, and so she and so my guess would be that like, oh, this music's popular. Oh, there's this like crazy like Egypt pyramids type of like amazing place in Peru. And so I think they probably just sort of shoehorned her in to sort of like take advantage of the fact that she was a big recording star at the time.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because she's amazing. But I thought it was
She
so
even
funny
has
when
some
they're
good
like,
acting moments in the movie too.
Yes. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
great, yeah. And I really, I mean, the sort of the story I was taught as a kid, like, I mean, I'm not Peruvian, I'm my family's Brazilian, but like my aunt was way into Sumac, and so like, um, and the story that I always learned as a kid is that she was the last living descendant of the great Inca emperor and all that stuff. But according to her biographer, that's all not true. Like that was just sort of, it was just a cool story. And like, but the thing is, you hear that and then you hear her sing and you're like, well, I mean, that tracks for me. How the hell else does somebody sing like that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you could have told me she was a vampire and I believed it, like,
She had
and so,
like the 4.5 octave range or whatever is, I think that's her octave range was the most humanly possible.
yeah.
That you can't go any more than that.
Yeah, her first album, Voice of Extabe, I think is, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. So
yeah,
like whatever. But I'm gonna lose my Latin American card. But but like, I mean, like those albums are really awesome. Like they're
Okay.
really, really, really fantastic.
And-
And they're just like, you're just like, how is this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything about Peruvian music. This may be somebody who grew up with it, be like, oh yeah, that's whatever folk song. But like, I mean, when you hear it, you're like, how does this exist? Like, it's so awesome. And like, and so yeah, and she was a pretty good actress. It was so funny. They're like, this is my lab assistant. And you're like,
Yeah.
Eva Sumach's your lab assistant? Like, that's
There's
maybe not the best use of her talents, but okay.
They have such a unique little camp setup there because so Robert Young plays the doctor. His name is Moorhead, is his last name, which sounds more like a Bond girl name. Which
yes.
so really thinking about it, I'm like, why hasn't there been? We had Dr. Holly Goodhead. Why wasn't
Goodhead? I was going to say.
yes, there should have been in the Pierce Brosnan era. We had a doctor called Dr. Warmflash. Why did we not have? I know. Why did we not have one named Moorhead? That's anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Especially when you got Harry Steele.
Especially when you have Harry Steele. Oh my goodness. That movie. So they are there. And honestly, I can't even remember how they're able to bluff their way into sticking around other than
they ran out of gas.
They ran out of gas. That was it.
Yeah.
And
just parked.
Just immediately they're welcomed in because Harry comes with an attractive woman and they're like, Dr. Robert Young, hello, darling. Good to meet you.
Yeah. I love when they're like, they don't see a lot of women around here. So blah, blah, blah. It's like half the goddamn tribe is female. What are you talking about? What are you
mean? Yeah.
Well, you know what we mean. I mean, we didn't mean like that. We're just saying, very funny.
Yeah.
Very funny.
But actually to piggyback on the that era, the 50s and this, like you had this is the time of like Calypso was really big.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and then when did West Side Story come out even?
That would have been in the 50s.
Yeah, and then it's very colorful and vibrant. Like I feel like that's definitely like a sign of the times. Would have been with with the music in film like that. And what's his name, Harry Belafonte, like I forget what movie he was in that they just like kind of just gave him some music to just sing. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that was common even with like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin movies. Like they always had like almost a musical interlude.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because it's like I mean, like use whatever you got. Like West Side Story was 61.
Mhm.
61, okay. Couple
But
years after.
yeah, so I mean, like I think like this whole idea of like transporting people to this far off, like mysterious
Exotic
land,
locations.
Yeah.
exotic land of Peru, you know,
Mhm.
and so, but I'd be very surprised if their decision to make this movie didn't coincide directly with
Mhm.
the first couple of Sumac albums, because I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
he was a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah.
So
Um,
there's a moment where Elena accuses Harry of turning into Morgan. Ooh, who, once again, Morgan just materializes. He shows up like a leprechaun, despite the fact that Harry Steele has waited so long to try getting there. And Morgan had no idea where it was, and that's why he was trying to get the little rock piece from Charlton Heston.
Yeah, that
yes,
doesn't up.
yeah,
There's,
that's a good point.
there might have been an explanation, but I watched it over twice and I didn't see any. So,
Huh.
Yeah, well, Charlton Heston does say he knows that it's real because he has the rock. So it's like everybody thought it might be real, and I guess it's assumed that it's at Machu Picchu because that's where they had discovered emperors or kings buried burial sites. Maybe
he says he followed them, is like what Morgan says, which
yeah,
maybe
mean,
he was hanging on the plane.
he must
The
have.
movie didn't think through it, so we shouldn't either.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
okay, hold on, wait a
drive a
minute.
truck through the plot holes.
Now I'm having a little bit of trouble here. So nobody knew where this treasure was.
Correct.
I mean, look, I get Machu Picchu is
Yeah.
big. Like,
yeah,
it's real big. But like, it's like, where would the treasure of the pharaohs be? Probably in the pyramid.
yeah, probably those giant pyramids. Exactly.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So like, maybe we just do what these archaeologists have been doing, and just tear the place apart looking for this thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's very interesting. It's not like it was somewhere that you wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah,
No,
it wasn't hidden in this non X marks the
it's not
spot.
Treasure Island. It's not
No.
Treasure
Yeah.
Island. You have to follow a map, and yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't know, what a glorious time to be a writer, because it doesn't seem like they got a lot of notes.
no. I mean, they were cranking them out.
Anytime a screenwriter complains about getting notes, they should look at this movie and be like, just saying, you know,
Yeah.
Decades later, three wise asses will be poking the holes in your plot. Do you want that? Maybe go back and just tell us how he
Actually,
got
you
the
know
rock.
what? Here's the thing. Most movies today, it's like 2 weeks after release date, you've got 3 nerds sitting there going, but
Yes.
Oh yeah.
much quicker
actually,
turnaround time.
Never had that kind of web power. If you look into the
According to Spider-Man 133. So she accuses Harry of turning into Morgan, who just wants the gold. And Charlton Heston, Harry Steele, appropriately notes, I'm much taller than him. It's impossible.
So he's so obsessed with height. He actually lampshades it at one point. Like, he's like, how big is he? She's like, what? He's like, it's like just a hobby of mine. Like, he has like this weird hobby of like, and it's funny because my dad was real tall, and he is, and he was. It's like tall, like real tall guys are kind of weirdly obsessed with height. It's funny.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only people I've noticed that tend to actually care about height are the ones that have it.
Yeah,
and then those that
like
really
if you're
don't.
6'2" plus, you're kind of weirdly fixated on height.
Yes, and then people that are extremely short, but anyone that's like in that middle, just it really doesn't matter.
There was a weird moment at my grandmother's funeral. Oddly enough, we're in line where all the family members are, and people shake your hand, or it was at her wake, and my cousin Mike's pretty tall, and this guy just comes up to him. Like, we're further down the line, so it's like it's like we're not as immediate. And so people just like, yeah, sorry, like I'm sick and sorry. In this large family, this guy comes to my cousin Mike. He's like, how tall are you? and Mike's like 6'2". He goes, my nephew's 6'4", and then he just walked away.
Yeah. So just suck on that. Suck on that, Mr. 6'2".
Oh, thanks for coming. Anyway,
that's really funny.
Pretty derail.
So next up, we have one of the funniest scenes, in my opinion, in this film. Moorhead, who we've already established kind of has the hots for Elena.
Yeah.
He walks up to her after another round of singing, and he's like, so this is what the Incas believed about the sun, and explains like the myth behind the sundial, sunburst, whatever. And immediately goes, will you marry me? Like literally no beat drop, no waiting, no pause, just goes right from the Incas collected the sun. Will you marry me?
No bullshit. Just a straight shooter, that guy.
It's just, I mean, it's never going to get any better than it is right now. So let's rock and roll.
I mean, I'm watching. I'm like, she better go with this guy. He's nice to her. I mean, he's
at least till you get to New York,
Yeah. I mean, he lives in Boston, so he's not in New York, but still, that's not a long drive.
No,
it's not even
after what you've been through.
No, no, exactly. It's a lot shorter than a plane ride to Machu Picchu with Harry Steele.
Well, I think that if we're gonna give Moorhead any credit, I don't know how long he'd been up there with the locals. Now they might have an entirely different coupling process, so it might be like we don't do casual coupling here. So it's like you got the hots for somebody, you go, you make it known right then. And so
he could have turned down several proposals from other
right. Yeah, maybe he was trying to get right, exactly. He's like, listen, these ladies won't leave me alone. I got to get tied down. But no, I mean, so maybe there's maybe he's just grown to accept. I don't know anything about Inca, marriage, but maybe he had seen a different way of doing it than our
he was moved by the beauty of the music and the surroundings, and he just got carried away. He just get carried away.
That's right.
In the height of passion.
They don't see a lot of women up here. It's like, what? Your lab assistant is a world famous. What are you talking about? Like, I know in the movie she's not a world famous singer, but it's like she's right there. Like, if you've ever been out I've been out to dinner like that before with like, dudes, like whatever LA type of dudes, and then like a couple of like my wife's friends, whatever. But and like I remember, I swear to God, this happened. One guy says, I thought there were supposed to be hot girls here. It's like,
what, in LA? Is that what?
Just say that out loud? You're at dinner with like 4 women. You fucking idiot. Like, I thought you said there was gonna be hot girls here. Anyway, that's like kind of the vibe I got from him. Anyway, it's funny.
I love how it's you said. So now he's put it in, implicating that you.
Yeah, like I'm like,
the scenery is good. Let me tell you.
So funny.
So they open up the tomb, and it might be one of the more realistic archaeology expedition moments when they're like, hey, we need to put the gas masks on.
Yeah. Well, also when the shot is very reminiscent of King Tut when Howard Carter, all the pictures I've ever seen when they found King Tut's tomb, it was like that same blocking, basically. Same
angle.
Yeah, it was definitely a reference point for them.
So the sunburst, they find it, and it's a piece of stone right there in the brick, in the rock. And immediately Harry Steele's like, well, guess we missed out on the gold that time. His exact words were, I adjust to things quickly.
There's a whole room full of stuff. And I guess, darn it.
Can't steal the thing I was planning on stealing.
Yeah, I did love the line, nobody ever made a buck in the daylight.
Yes.
I love that line.
That was a good line.
Yeah, it's really good. And then when he's like, what are you looking at? He goes, sort of a mirror, which I thought was pretty great.
That was a good.
It was a whole cool scene, and the guy's like, he's pointing the pistol, and he's like, "These 6 votes are for me." That was very cool. That was
a good scene all around. I think.
Yeah.
A good moment for Harry Steele, his character development. He took a turn there.
He's starting to see my obsession can lead to this, because really, the closer we get to Morgan potentially getting the sunburst, he starts getting more crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more unhinged. And you're realizing, oh, this is what fixating on one thing your entire life can eventually get you. Great to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, especially since it was that easy to get to all this time, it was like, as far as Morgan, it seems it was like down the street. It was like next door. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that hard to get to.
Why
It's
didn't I
like I've
think of this
spent
20 years ago?
30 years farting around in this hotel in the mountains, like, and it was
hiring
actually
incompetent
hard to get to.
snipers.
Yeah.
Hiring snipers, doing all this stuff. I could have hired like 3 guys to dig.
So Harry Steele goes back in the middle of the night when everyone else is sleeping, and in a scene that Indiana Jones ripped off almost beat for beat, he finds, like, if he puts this reflecting thing, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, did we see a moment where he picked up the thing that, like, fits there or anything?
Yes,
like a gold thing.
Yeah, the little gold thing.
When he first comes in, he goes in after they open the tomb, and then I think everybody's watching the music, and he goes and he picks it up. He pockets the gold thing. Or he pocketed the gold thing pretty early on. And then he comes out and talks to Dr. Moorhead. So
that was something I missed. So he sets the little gold large spoon,
the staff of Ra.
Yes, the staff of Ra. He sets it there in the spot that's clearly built for it, and then the light reflects for the moonlight or the flashlight. I can't remember which he uses, and it shows the location of where the sunburst actually is. Prybar opens it up just as he reveals the sunburst. There is Ed Morgan with the gun, and he says, "Give me."
Well, he was the treasure all along.
Yes. Harry Steele was the treasure the entire time.
Well, Morgan, and you know, I mean, I think, guys, really, the treasure was learning not to be like Morgan. So really,
yes.
You know.
So this is that moment where then, like, the other Peruvian guy is there. He, like, shows up having heard the commotion, and he goes to help. And again, in a scene which defies physics, Ed Morgan does not shoot either of them, but he does knock them out with a judo chop in a scene that is straight from Austin Powers.
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe was it a judo chop or a pistol whip? Because a pistol whip's a little more like
pistol whip.
A pistol.
He might have done that. I just saw his hand go down like this on his shoulder. And I was like, what's that gonna do?
Yeah, on the shoulder is not. Yeah, that's ill-advised.
Did they? I can't believe I'm going to ask this, but like, did they explain at all how the Incan people, the Peruvian individuals, how they've been able to, like, maintain every other element of their culture, like, perfectly, but like nobody in that entire civilization can remember where they buried
they lost their keys,
the most important cultural artifact. Like, I mean, is that, like, not the most, like, patronizing thing? Like,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's very like okay, like the Jovitos in Raiders, like,
they
not that they got the greatest treatment either, but at least they knew where the thing was.
Yeah, just nobody touched it. They just leave it there. They leave it.
They didn't want anybody touching it. They know where it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just funny. It's funny to me that, like, this, like, proud group of people that, like, has, like, lived unchanged in the mountains, like, all these years, just whoops, can't remember, even though we went through the trouble of this weird, like, light thing, and, like, nobody told their grandkids, hey, if you ever need the sun thing that we worship all the time but somehow misplaced in rocks, like if you ever need it, you got to look through the light. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's something somebody would tell somebody.
Yeah, you put that in your will. That's something you put in your
will.
It's something that gets passed down generation to generation. That I just assume every time there's that plot, like in House of the Dragon has a similar thing where he's like, and this has been passed down from heir to heir. all it takes is one of the heirs being inconveniently killed off.
Yeah.
And
okay, so maybe that's what happened.
there's no knowledge then. And you're like, that wasn't very well thought through now, was it?
No, yeah. Write it
You need
down.
like the President's Book of Secrets and National Treasure too.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, all right. Okay, I guess that's right. I mean, they don't give everybody in America the combination to like
Fort Knox.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, so maybe it's okay. All right.
But
You know what?
that is a very fair thing, because I have more thoughts on that once we get to the end of the book, end of this film. But so Ed Morgan steals the sunburst and then does what every extremely old man in the mountains decides to do. He runs.
Yes.
And runs around in the mountains. And Harry Steele's plan is basically find the spot where he's inevitably going to have to go, and he stands there and waits for him, as inevitably Ed Morgan is out of breath, wheezing, and falls like to the ground, leans against the rock and goes, age is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
And Morgan's just like, pass it over. They have a scene where he shoots his bullets, and then he like shoots into the air when he realizes he's out of bullets, and then throws the gun away. I'm like, dude, no one else knew you were out of bullets. You could have just held the gun.
I thought that was strange too.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was strange too.
Also, my favorite part of that chase scene was they shot it day for night. So you have like the blue sky, which they did often back then. And then there were a couple shots where they forgot to day for night, it looked like. So it was like nighttime.
Yes.
Like in the middle of a chase, it just turned to day, and then it was back at night. Like it was a B movie, like John said. It was a B movie
in the most exquisite way possible.
One line I will be using at some point in life is when he turns to Morgan and he goes, "What now, you crud?" I was like, "Oh, what now, you crud?" It's a
solid one.
That's a great line. It's a word that needs to come back. Crud.
It does.
I do like crud.
There's also the moment, and this is a line that I think in about 5 to 10 years we're gonna have James Bond saying these kinds of things as the villain dies. But the guy literally is like, when you age, everything you get pulled down. Gravity is a terrible thing. And literally like seconds later falls off the side of the mountain.
So good.
No, they tip their hand pretty quick.
I love any time in a movie though when you have a dummy falling off something.
Yes.
Like I genuinely enjoy watching that.
It was like a Beastie Boys Sabotage.
Yeah.
It was just so fake.
I love it. I love when you have a car go off a cliff and there's a dummy in it, or like you have a dummy in a car that lands at the bottom of a cliff and then the dummy's in there and then the car blows up. Like anytime somebody throws a dummy, I'm in. I say that with no, I'm not kidding. I think it's great.
So Charlton Heston has his moment of decision. Is the question, because now he doesn't even have to go back for the girl. He can just, because she's probably going to marry Dr. Moorhead, he can just take the sundial, the sunburst, get to the plane and leave. And instead he does the right thing and he returns it to the archaeologists, which here is the moment that I find, A, it feels rather anticlimactic, but B, they immediately take the sunburst and then like take it to their worship shrine. And we have a very reinforcement of the idea that non-Americans are superstitious. And then you quickly think to yourself, oh, but the archaeologists will take that back with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is insane.
Yeah, let's go into the London Museum.
The leader of the the guy that gets the most speaking time anyway, of the Peruvians, he actually asks the doctor, the archaeologist, hey, can I use this? Can I take this just for a second to go worship or whatever? It's like, dude, it's yours. It belongs to you guys. Like Americans wouldn't be in Germany somewhere and be like, hey, the Declaration of Independence. Like, do you mind if we just borrow it for a second, just read it over, kind of whatever, and then we'll give it back? Nobody would ever do that. It is. You know what I mean? Like it's their people's. It was just such a funny like like American way of looking at things where it's like, yeah, go ahead, brown man, take the you can borrow it for a second. Just be careful.
Don't dent it. Don't dent it.
Don't dent it. And also, it's not really real. It's just gold. It belongs in a museum. It's not really, doesn't have magical powers. It was just so funny the fact that the guy asked permission of this dude that just showed up like a few weeks earlier looking for it. Like, it's very, very funny. And then the idea that like an entire group of people wouldn't be digging around themselves looking for their most important artifact. So strange.
I'm reading a book right now. I think it's called Inca Gold, even by Clive Cussler, because I wanted to go down the Clive Cussler kick. Well, in the book, an archaeologist is like, yeah, we don't have to chase tomb robbers. Our version of tomb robbers are just like people wandering around. They're like, gee, I wonder if I can find something. And they're like, oh, look, I found artifacts. Let me sell them on the black market. Yes, no, I don't believe that people wouldn't have been searching through there for this for generations before and just finding it over time.
Yeah, it's just it's funny, like this sort of trope that sort of becomes internalized, where it's like, well, they don't know enough to look for it, or like they don't know enough to like and I don't know. I mean, like I don't know why. I don't know why that became such a trope or whatever. I don't know enough about like real expeditions and like real like archaeological digs to like. It's just funny that like they like obviously the Peruvian individuals had really wanted this thing for a long time, really been looking for it. So it's like, why would they wait around for a bunch of Americans to come show up and be like, okay, we'll help you look for it before we take it to a museum? It's weird.
So we didn't really touch on it yet, but Harry Steele. So first and foremost, what did you guys think of the ending overall? Like when you reached that point, how were your emotions?
I was like, why is she like? I said it a while ago, but just stay with the doctor. Like,
oh, that's right. Yes. So she goes with Harry Steele.
Yeah, she goes
because he lied to her.
Yeah,
there's that moment where he's like,
all,
who chopped down the cherry tree? And she's like, I know everything. It was Abraham Lincoln. And later she asks Moorhead, she's like, who chopped down the cherry tree? And he goes, George Washington. And then she asks Harry the question again later. He goes, oh, Abraham Lincoln, just like you said.
The correct answer is nobody. It's a bullshit.
Yes.
But
well, you guys obviously have not spent enough time in the pickup artist circles. He had very, very deftly negged her, and then he had established greatness, and he had done all these things. He had followed all of that stuff. So obviously she's going to go with him. The dude is an alpha, of course.
Everybody knows.
Everybody knows that when a woman has absolutely no choice but to go along with you because she's running away from communist mania and then stuck in the middle of the mountains with you, like, obviously you're irresistible.
She reminded me of in The Godfather, Michael's wife Apollina, the Sicilian girl. She's like, I know English Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like, oh yeah. Abraham Lincoln chopped down the cherry tree, and I forget what the other one was. The other Americanism that she got wrong. I
don't remember that one either. But like, I mean, it was, I mean, I thought it would have been like this would never have happened. But like, if he had found it, and then he's like, I found it, and then he's like, I'm gonna return it, and then the locals just killed him for it, like, and he didn't get the opportunity to even make the right, like, you know what I mean? It's like he made the right decision at the like that's the noir ending, right? Like he decided to make the right decision, but it was too late.
He gets a dart in the neck.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
that's the American Pulps ending.
Yes, yeah.
right. But like yeah, I mean, I thought that the actress whose name I unfortunately cannot remember, who played Elena, I thought given the role that
Oh,
was on
yeah.
the page for. I thought she did a great job.
Yeah, she was good.
Her name was Nicole Maury.
Ah.
She
Yeah,
was from French. She was French.
Yeah, she's French. I didn't recognize any other films that she was in when I glanced at her IMDb. Was this a reference for One Man's Treasure, your next book coming out?
It is not, unfortunately.
Okay.
There's so many things, though, with it is not in my references for One Man's Treasure, but it's one of those films that could easily eventually become one.
Yes, yeah. I mean, because I mean, if you're referencing Indiana Jones in any way,
yeah, inevitably that's the thing. I think that so this film set the template for the image of Indiana Jones, I think, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
100%.
He's wearing the fedora, he's got the leather jacket on.
Yeah.
Even down to where he's wearing like the same kind of pants, or like a cavalry.
They could have switched outfits and no one would know.
If you gave him a whip, he's Indiana Jones.
The only thing that he has different that I kind of like, I want that like back in the adventurer thing is he's like wearing this cravat / scarf.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why isn't that there?
He's got the pilot's scarf.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to have known more about his background, like because it would be cool to if there was like a Rick from Casablanca type of, I mean that's what one of the things that's so cool about Casablanca is, like, in the beginning you learn about the character through everybody else gossiping about him, you know what I mean, and so it's like, because you'd think
we know nothing about Harry other than he's a cat.
Like this mountain village, you're like, why is this gigantic like American dude just like lumbering around, just weirdly lumbering around our village all the time? You think you'd talk about it.
Yeah, I feel like it's almost implied. I mean, and again, it's part of that era. It's after World War II. You got a guy with a bomber jacket who knows how to fly. In South America, they're probably he's just some adventurer after World War II who like wanted to keep the adventure going,
right? Or like went AWOL or whatever, so like couldn't legally go back.
Have you guys read Plunder of the Sun?
No, I have not.
Of the Sun. I'm just looking up the book here. Oh, it apparently did get turned into a movie. It did get turned into a movie in 1953. I'll have to give that one a watch. But Plunder of the Sun was a novel written by David Dodge, the guy that wrote Catch Me If You Can.
Yep.
Not Catch Me If You Can, To Catch a Thief.
Oh, To Catch a Thief.
Oh, okay.
Catch a Thief. So he wrote these adventure stories in the, double check the day here, in the 40s and 50s of this guy that he was the adventurer that he was collecting artifacts and stealing stuff. And he wrote one that was directly related to like Incan treasure. And apparently Plunder of the Sun's the name of it. I didn't realize it got turned into a film, but now I'm really curious to see how much of this was then recycled and referenced, because in that one he is a very similar character to Charlton Heston. When I first read Secret of the Inca, watched it, I was like, oh, is this an adaptation of Plunder of the Sun?
Okay.
Well, it's funny because like I think one of the big things that makes Indiana Jones such a it's like just this very simple tweak. I mean, besides Harrison Ford being as charismatic as he is, it's just the one simple tweak that, like, even though his code is flawed, he has a very specific code. It's the Omar from The Wire thing, where it's like he says it belongs in the museum. So it's like, is that a code? Like, do I share that same code? Maybe not. Maybe just leave the thing there because the Jovitos, it's important. But it's like you're like, okay, well, this guy, I know that whatever decision this guy is going to make is going to be based on that very specific worldview.
Yes.
And then that worldview, when he sees the power of the ark and the power of the whatever and all that stuff, like then it expands or whatever. But it's like, but that specific idea, I think, is what separates him from, like, for example, Harry Steele, where you're like, well, what does this guy believe? Because it's like somebody can be a total jerk, and it's like, it's okay as long as you know exactly where he's coming from.
So perfect example of this. And again, it's not that he's a good character by any stretch, but John Wayne's character in The Searchers,
100%.
he has a horrible worldview that is extremely racist,
Yeah.
but he is consistently making choices based on what he believes. And we as the audience watch that and at least know where he's coming from and why he's doing what he's doing.
Right.
Whereas in this case, like Harry Steele, we don't know anything about why he's doing this, what his motivation is. It's like going, what I would argue is too far the other direction. I think that modern films have a tendency to overdo the dramatic backstory, and we have to know everything about this character, leaving nothing to mystery. And in this case, it almost feels like there's not enough to bite.
Yeah. Well, even something as simple, and I realize this can be very cheap, but like even something as simple as a good tagline, you know, like in The Searchers, like that'll be the day. You know, he keeps coming back to that line, and it's like, you know, you're like, okay, like something to just sort of like
it belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
Right. Like it belongs in a museum. Exactly. Like
a consistent belief expressed through action.
Yeah. And I mean, in Breaking Bad, when he was like, I'm doing it for my family, and then at the end when he finally cops to the idea, spoiler alert, if somebody out there hasn't seen Breaking Bad
but wants to see Secret of the Incas for whatever reason.
yeah. It's like exactly. The overlap between people who want to hear people talk about Secret of the Incas and haven't quite finished Breaking Bad yet. Pause now. But when he like cops to at the end, like, I didn't do it for my family. I did it for me. I was good at it. I enjoyed doing it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's great because it's like, even if you know he's lying to himself,
yes,
you know, it's still, and The Searchers is great because he has this real intimate idea. He has this real intimate knowledge of like Comanche cultures and Comanche beliefs and all that stuff. And like, yeah, I mean, he's not a great guy in the movie, but yeah, you know where he's coming from. And like, yeah, it's like Harry Steele, like, it's like he's kind of whatever the scene needs, that's his motivation. And it's like, you know, it seems like it could have been easily, you know, who am I to criticize the guy that wrote The Big Heat? But like, still.
So I recently read a great book called Character by Robert McKee, and highly recommend, but he does a great job of like exploring what is it that makes good characters. And he uses Breaking Bad as an example of having a character who has multiple self-contradictions. And it's that exploration of, I do this, but I believe this, and I believe this, but I do this, that, or even making two disparagingly different actions. It's the exploration of what that means for a character that lets you have a good long-form series out of him. Even he explores, in the book, he talks about not only Breaking Bad, but then also Mad Men, and just the multitude of different types of selves, how the hidden self is that they have that belief and drive that they don't want to admit to, or they can't confront.
Mad Men, every character.
Exactly. So again, they do a great job at that in those series, and Secret of the Incas is not the place to go for depths of character.
No, you'd have to like kind of imagine your own internal story with him, which I guess is fun. But like, you know, or Michael Corleone is like one of the great, like, you know, it's my family, it's not, you know, like that's such a great, like when you see that belief disintegrate over the course of the movies, it's like, it's great because you're like, you know, you had an idea that he was lying in the beginning, you know. I mean, I don't know, because who knows? It's so hard to watch that movie objectively now, having seen it. But like, and then you're like, oh my god, he didn't even realize he was lying to himself. Like, it's, you know, it's cool. So it's like, even if Harry Reams was like, I mean, Harry Reams, Christ, that was a porn star in the 80s. Harry Steele.
I think Michael Corleone's a more fair comparison than Don Draper or, you know, Walter White or anybody, because Mad Men and Breaking Bad are, you know, episodic. You have a lot of hours to
to flesh out who they are.
Yeah, it's like flesh out. I mean, you don't learn like Don Draper's Dick Whitman until much later.
Spoilers for Mad Men also.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
for all the Secret of the Incas heads out there.
Yeah, exactly. And Darth Vader is Luke's dad. But Bruce Willis,
the lady in the Crying Games, dude.
Yeah. Bruce Willis is a dead guy. So, but with comparing it to The Godfather, that's a film. I mean, it's it's 3 films and it's much longer films, but I mean that's something where like you have that backstory, you have that journey.
Well, even so, Casablanca is another film. I recently discussed it with another guy in this series that we're doing on influences of Indiana Jones. In Casablanca, you have basically the same amount of runtime as Secret of the Incas. Rick is a far more developed character.
Oh, big time.
100%.
Is incredible.
That's a great film. Yeah.
In terms of character development, Casablanca is still feels so modern. It's so like that movie rips.
Compared to this one, the editing.
Yes. Oh no, it sings
astonishingly.
That film sings, and you know this one lags in some spots.
Yeah, it's like I mean, in a lot of ways, like Casablanca. Sounds corny, but like it's a mystery where it's like the mystery is who is this dude. You know, like who is he really? And like,
I've heard people say it's like a noir with a happy ending.
Yeah, it's I mean, oh god, just such great, like, you know, what did you? It's like he's like, did you? Some say you stole. What did you do? Like run off with the collection plate? I'd like to think you killed a man. It's a romantic ending. It's like a little bit of all 3 or whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I'm not. But you know, just so many great, like everybody from the beginning is trying to figure out who Rick is, and it's like an obvious. I mean, it's just so great.
It's
like
such an interesting world because it's, you know, you have everybody spies and
the characters, everyone. There's an amazing cast. And again, I think that in Secret of the Incas, the actors did the best with what they had. I really love Charlton Heston in this movie. For as much of a cad as he is, he's enjoying the role. He shows up, he does his thing. He plays just the hard-bitten guy really well. The gal plays Elena, whose name I've forgotten again, Nicole something. She does an amazing job in her role. It's just there isn't much on the bone, which honestly, so when we talk about like the idea of doing reboots of anything from past, it's films like this that I want to see a reboot of. I was doing some research on the Casablanca thing, and I didn't realize Madonna tried making a Casablanca reboot with Ashton Kutcher as Rick.
Tough.
I know.
What?
I know.
Wait,
would you imagine
Ilsa?
She would be Ilsa. This film that was blackballed. This would be 2001.
Okay, that's a little better.
A studio would touch it.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons.
But because at the end, you would think that Rick was going to send Paul Henreid's character to get, and then he'd be like, "Just kidding, you've been punked."
Yes. Dude, where's my car? This came out that would have come out around the same time as Dude, Where's My Car?
So this film, however, Secret of the Incas, I think is a film that could be rebooted. Pretty, like the plot necessarily could change, but it's an adventure. It's an adventure, and it isn't that hard to just take MacGuffin, make the adjustments, and turn it into something better.
Oh yeah. I mean, like
these are the films, if you want to go through Hollywood's canon and remake, need to be remade.
Yeah. Now, did they ever do I'm gonna lose my nerd card, but like, did they ever do like a Ravencroft origin story movie or series?
So what they're talking about right now is possibly doing a prequel series about Dr. Ravenwood.
Ravenwood. That's what I mean, not Ravencroft.
Yes.
That's Ravenwood. Yeah.
So that's what they're talking about doing, because basically the conclusion everyone's come to is, for as long as Harrison Ford's alive, everyone's too scared to reboot Indiana Jones.
Well, and they did.
I almost guarantee.
I almost guarantee you, the moment he's dead, they're gonna wait an acceptable amount of time and reboot it, because it has IP.
Yeah.
But it is. I am excited. I'm like tentative, because there's that part of me that wants to see more of this, where it's that adventure pulp stuff. I mean, that's the reason why I wrote One Man's Treasure, is I like treasure hunting stories.
Yes.
There aren't a lot of them. The problem, I was recently talking with someone else about this. He made the interesting observation. there aren't a lot of Indiana Jones. They made those novelizations and they made tie-in novels that were Indiana Jones on other adventures. They didn't make many of them, though. Star Wars, they have been churning out those books since the start.
Yeah.
Right.
At the moment, there doesn't seem to be the demand for adventure in the pulpy genre, like Indiana Jones, the way that we used to, like back in the 40s, not 40s, but like in the 80s, people that grew up with that stuff.
Yeah.
Because Indiana Jones is the mix of everything else.
Well, yeah, he's a bit of Doc Savage. He's a bit of Alan Quartermain. Or
Alan Quartermain, yeah. King
Big
Solomon's
time, yeah.
Mines, which is a ripping good book, and not enough people have read it.
Yeah.
I loved the movie, The City of Gold. I used to love that movie. When they would dip the people in the gold and make them into statues. It was awesome. I loved it.
Have either of you guys seen The Lost City with Sandra Bullock? And
yes, that was great. You told me about it.
Okay,
I watched it because of you. That was actually really well done. And the Brad Pitt scenes, I will not say any spoilers, but the Brad Pitt scenes are some of the funniest scenes I've seen in a while. They're very funny.
But like that's, I think, the closest thing we're going to get to a modern adventure film right now. I don't know if we're going to get...
That's closer to like a Romancing the Stone.
Yeah, I think that we're going to get more stuff like that if we get anything for a while. That's my guess.
It would be hard. I mean, the thing about Star Wars is that Star Wars exists in a fictional universe, whereas like Indiana Jones, unless you keep it specifically in, you know, the sort of World War II, like whatever, like, you know, once you get beyond the 1980s, it's like, it's very difficult because we have satellites, we've got like, we've like, whatever, you know, it's a...
the world has become smaller. There isn't as much wonder. Did you guys see, what was that show? It was the one on Netflix that starred Josh Jamal as like an old guy. It like lost a whole bunch of money the first season that they made it.
Really?
But basically it's like, it's a superhero show, but then like their whole prequel flashbacks are that like in the 1940s and 50s, they did like this whole Skull Island pulp adventure thing, that's where they got their powers from.
Oh, interesting.
And it was interesting, but it really just highlighted adventure fits within a box in our minds, like the time period for adventure, because once we have technology, it really takes away any of like the problems, the conflicts that come up in adventure.
It's really 1890s to like 1930s. Like 1890s to World War II is really, you know, the time frame. I mean, that's kind of the golden age, I would say, because anything before that, you got cowboy stories. You know, but 1890s, you know, that's when you're gonna have, it's Victorian era.
You have colonialism, which has people in different places they wouldn't normally be, experiencing different cultures.
You had real you know, excavations, and especially in Egypt, and in the 1920s after, or early in 1910s 1920s, after King Tut was found, they would have like mummy parties.
Oh yeah,
like these rich people would have, like, they would buy mummies from like mummified remains, and they'd be like open them up at a house party. You know, it's just really
crush them up, snort them.
Actually, you see, here's the sad part. You're not entirely wrong. They would drink, like they would put it in water and they drink it.
Yeah, which to me is
gross.
Is an interesting premise for like the curse of a mummy. I mean, Jesus, you want a curse of a mummy, like drinking their, you know, death shrouds or whatever.
Right.
is a good way to get a curse. Is a good way to get cursed.
I mean, one of the things I love about Raiders of the Lost Ark, and there's of course that transcript of the conversation between Lucas and Spielberg and Kasdan and all them, like, but it's the economy of world building.
Yes.
You know, it's like, okay, like we're looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Boom. I understand what that is. Who's after it? The Nazis. Cool. I'm on board. Like, you know, it's like, what's her name? Marion Ravenwood. Like they had
she has the thing.
Before. We don't have to, right. And we don't have to build their relationship. All she has to do is slap them and say, I was a girl, I was young, I was blah, 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 you know, whatever, I was in love. And it's like, it's just every single scene is so economical. Even that super long one in library where they're like sort of like laying a lot of like narrative piping and stuff.
Mhm.
But it's like it's just, I mean, Raiders, like everything after Raiders, it's like we culturally sort of like know where Indiana Jones is coming from, so it's a little
Yeah.
bit different. But that first movie, it's just
Mhm.
it's so, just from like a screenwriting standpoint, it's
It's
so
amazing.
But
incredibly economical when it comes
Mhm.
to
they also would have every, like he would be in a situation, and then he, like, how's he gonna get out of this? He get out of that, and then he's even in a bigger situation. Like, it's like he's getting chased by the Jovitos. He goes through that whole thing where he's in the temple at the
Mhm.
start. He almost gets rolled over by a boulder, and then he's out of there. Okay, good. He's out. Oh, now all the Jovitos are after him. So now he's got to
Yeah.
swim to safety. How does he get out? He's got this guy with an airplane, and then, you know, he's in a he ends up getting buried alive. Then he gets out. He ends up
Mhm.
hopping on a submarine. Like, I don't know how ended up. That's the only plot hole, is like he swam to a submarine. Does he go inside it?
So I think he like hangs on the side of the submarine.
That's a big
But
problem.
that's a big problem because the submarine goes under. The one flaw I've heard in Raiders, which once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it because I think the movie is nearly perfect.
It's nearly perfect, but the
There,
submarine. Yeah.
well, not only that, so in a story, the protagonist needs to drive the plot, and in theory, the plot should be created by what the protagonist is doing. Not one thing would have happened differently by the end of Raiders had Indiana Jones not been there.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the one flaw that, like, narratively story building, you're like, oh, which honestly, it says something to the film that
Yes.
that's something that normally breaks any other story or film, but that one it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a that's a good
point.
that's
Yeah.
a really good point. Well, I actually, and this may be heresy, whatever. Like, I feel that way about the movie Seven. Like,
I've actually never seen it.
Yeah. No, we've
oh,
yeah.
I
okay,
need to
well
give
then
it a
never mind.
watch.
Well, I colored your view, but yeah, but yeah,
It's a
that
fun
is a
ride.
pet
It is a
peeve.
fun
Mhm.
ride. Seven.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's super fun.
It's
a very,
David Fincher writing and directing, right?
Is it?
He didn't write it. It was Kevin.
Yeah, I don't know who the writer was, but it's.
But
I mean,
it's supposed to be like one of the classic modern noir films. I've seen it on the
Stylistically,
list.
performance-wise, like in terms of mood and all
Mhm.
that stuff, it's super cool to watch. Like,
yeah,
very,
it's very
very
gritty. Yeah, a lot of rain.
yeah, really beautiful and like just very. It's super worth watching. Very cool.
Mhm.
There's just elements of it that I was like, what the hell? But but it's cool. It's very cool.
It's like the usual suspects in a way. It's like, oh, he's
Yeah.
just spouting bullshit the whole time.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about it.
So wrapping up here, guys, what was your favorite moment from Secret of the Incas? If you had one, what was the highlight for you?
I liked when they're in the bar and they got the guy hammered. I don't know.
Mhm.
I just thought that was like
Yeah.
hilarious. They got the guy hammered and stole his plane, because I was like, how they gonna, what's he planning to do? Oh, he's just gonna get him drunk. And then you got the woman, what's her name, with her husband, is like,
Yes.
it's just like everything about that scene made me laugh. I enjoyed that scene a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the whole that whole sort of plot element where he ratted her out to the guy that was
Mhm.
hunting her, and then took the plane and all that stuff. I thought that was very cool. And then, the musical scenes with Ima Sumac were cool, just to have that sort of like historical document.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'd say those are probably my favorites.
Mhm. I think pretty much anytime Charlton Heston opens his mouth and says something absolutely horrible and amazing at the same time, that those were my highlight moments.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, go ahead, John.
No. Yeah, I'm saying it's easy to see why he was such a massive movie star.
Oh,
Yeah, and watching it, I know we're wrapping up, but watching it, like I was like, he's got a face like a movie star. Like, he just like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
you know, I was watching, I was like, oh man, he kind of looks like, you know, you could put so many actors in like just it's like a clean slate. Like he kind of looks like Bradley Cooper, but he kind of looks like Harrison Ford. He kind of like it's interesting. I don't watch many. I've seen Planet of the Apes, you know, Ten Commandments. I haven't seen a lot of Charlton Heston, but yeah, he definitely has a gravitas to him.
He took everything far more seriously as an actor, which is fun to watch, especially when then he's acting against people that don't. Like, imagine him
like Nick Cage.
Yeah. Yes. Like, I just imagine, like, if he had worked with Claude Rains, the guy who played Captain Renault, that would have been amazing to see.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, this has been a delight. Where can people go to learn more about American Pulps?
Probably AmericanPulps.com and our social media. We have pretty much everything, and it's just at American Pulps.
Yeah.
Awesome. And we will link all that in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us.
Hey, thank you, man. Thanks for having us again.
Yeah, thank you for having us.